hours. Wow. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Homegrown series for August. If you can believe it, this is going to be our 4th month doing this lecture series, and we've gotten a lot of great positive feedback. So luckily, a lot of you are just as excited as we are to continue providing this for you. So this is the very first of August. Of our August lectures, starting it off with Paul Winsky, EarthKind Landscape Practices. Next week will be Shannon Dietz, the county ag agent. He'll be doing his part 2 of home lawn maintenance and care, followed by Kim Perry, the Prairie View ag agent, talking about fall vegetable varieties. And then we'll end it up with myself, Brandy Keller, talking about elements of landscape design. So again, you can keep registering for these all at once, so that way you don't have to do it on a week-to-week basis. Obviously, this is our 2nd week in presenting this Teams Live. So to the right, there should be a Q&A, and that is where you can ask your questions, and we will check in with Paul, or he'll check in with us once we get started, just seeing if you have any questions. But feel free to let us know that you're here also. All right, so Paul, with all the excitement in the world, we welcome you to talk about EarthKind Landscape Practices.
All right, Brandy. Well, thank you very much. It's good to be back here on Thursday. And let's get started after that introduction. Okay. Here we go. All right. We are good. So here we are. We're going to talk about EarthKind Landscape Practices. And just to give you some background, this program probably started in the mid to late 90s. Dr. Steve George and Wayne McKay were probably the two, I guess, grandfathers of this program. And it is a program that really takes the guesswork out of landscaping. Following these tools and these practices and these management recommendations, you can have a beautiful and successful landscape. So with that, you know, I like to do poll everywhere. So my first question is, and I've only got one, is EarthKind Landscaping and Xeriscaping the same management practices? So in order to reply to this, if you text Paul Winsky 227 to the number 37607, it will allow you access, and then just enter either A or B. So we've heard about Xeriscaping, and I'm not sure if you're all aware of EarthKind Landscaping, but just to see what your thought is. Are they the same? Are they different? Xeriscaping probably started out in Colorado, and you see it a lot in the desert Southwest. Minimal plant material, maybe a little bit more hardscaping, things like that. But we'll leave this up for just a second. It is active. We should see responses as they come in, and we will go from there then. So let's see. If you've got your phones, very easy to do. Just go ahead and text, and you will we'll see what the responses are. Here we go. So we've got, so far, we've got an A. 100% are saying that they are the same management practices. All right, let's give it another minute or two to see if anybody disagrees. And as we work through, really what I want you to do is, as we work through this, I want you to think about it from what you know about xeriscaping and what you're going to learn about landscaping. Are they the same? Are they similar? Are there things maybe from both worlds that we're seeing in EarthKind? You know, what are those differences with regard to xeriscaping? So we've got about a third of the people are thinking, well, now we're at 50-50. All right, this is awesome. So let's go ahead and start moving on. So half of the group thinks they're the same. The other half thinks they are not. So let me lock this right where we're at now. Okay. And let's move on. So let's get into the meat of this. So what are the goals? I'm reading about this, or I found it on the site. What are the goals? Really, with EarthKind, we want to have, like, everybody wants a beautiful landscape. The one plus with EarthKind is there is minimal maintenance. If you put the time and effort really into the planning and the preparation of your soil and your beds, the landscape is going to take care of itself for you. So I was a little doubtful. I've been with Extension for coming up on 8 years, but when I went up to see the EarthKind Roche trials up in the Dallas area, and to see that some of those trials had been in for well over 10 years, and all they do is this minimal inputs, which is perfect for everybody's busy schedule. And then the other thing is everybody's concerned about the environment. Well, if you use these practices, you're going to maximize or minimize the harm to the environment. So it's a win-win. You're going to have a great landscape, you're going to have great plants, and you're going to have minimal negative effect on the environment. So what are the principles? So these are the 7 principles that we're going to talk about, that we're going to go over. Of course, like anything else, you've got to have a good plan and a good design, and we'll touch on that. We're going to talk about practical turf areas, and this is an area I think early on with xeriscaping was get rid of turf. And I think they have even changed their tune over the years, but practical turf areas, and this is going to vary depending on do you have kids? Do you have dogs? Do you not? You got to remember, turf is probably our biggest water hog, especially this time of year. We're putting a lot of people are putting a lot of water in order to maintain that turf area. Having the appropriate plant selection. As I always stress when I either teach the master gardeners or talk to anybody, you want the right plant in the right place. You want to have proper soil improvement, and then effective use of mulches, I think, are key. In my book, they're 1 and 2. Efficient irrigation, and then if you do all of that, maintenance is going to be minimal, and you're going to have an excellent landscape. So these practices are really, I'd like to call them the protectors of the environment. Okay, by utilizing these, we can conserve water. We're going to protect the air and water quality. We are going to reduce irrigation by a minimum of 70%. And I'll touch on some of the trials that we did about how little water we really had to use on these roses. Now, roses like a lot of water also. But once you get them established and you get this landscape up and running, if you've got proper soil preparation and you're mulching, you can really save a lot on your water. So you're going to save that resource, and you're also going to save some money because you're not paying all that on your water bill. We are going to reduce our pesticide usage, and from the trials, at least over 90%. Our EarthKind trial with the roses, we did not spray the roses at all for fungus or for any insects. We had plenty of beneficial insects in the area because we did not introduce any outside sprays. Now, does that mean if I'm EarthKind, I don't have to spray? No. Even with integrated pest management, you may need to spray, but you're not going to have to come in and maybe treat the entire landscape. You can probably just come in and spot spray if you've got a hot spot. And then in most loam or clay soils, which is here, we're going to reduce the need for commercial fertilizers. And it doesn't matter, when I say commercial fertilizers, it doesn't matter whether it's the synthetic or organic. You'll see a slide down here later on. You're going to see compost once and mulch for life. And really, that is the key. The nutrients between the microorganisms breaking the product down, you're going to have plenty of nutrients in there, and that soil is going to thrive, and those plants are going to thrive as they establish. So first one, soil improvement. You work with what you have. Whether that's a sand, a loam, or in this case, in our area, everybody's probably dealing with that clay. So how do we do that? We always recommend a soil test. This is just a good practice, especially when you're putting in a new bed, just so you have an idea. Is there anything out of whack? Is there something way too high or way too low? And then you can make those adjustments if needed. But then it's really just at minimum, a 3-inch layer of compost. This is tilled into that native soil, and you move on from there. Now, if you've got some other issues, you can put in up to 6 inches of compost. It all depends on the size of the bed and your funds to do that. If you have really poor drainage soil, a 3-inch layer of expanded shale along with a 3-inch layer of compost works extremely well. And why do we compost? I'm probably preaching to the choir, but you can see a lot of those positive verbs that are in there: improves, increases. Your soil structure is going to improve. Your water and nutrient holding capacity will increase. We're going to get better aeration. If we've got better aeration, we're going to have also better drainage. Remember, your soil isn't just about holding water. You've got to have air in there in order for those roots. So we've got to have enough pore space that can fill with water, that can drain, but then we can also have some air exchange in there. And then the microbes. And these are the guys that are going to really keep that soil healthy and thriving throughout the landscape establishment. So one-time incorporation, we want to use the compost we want to use has to be fully finished. All right. We don't want something that's halfway. Why? Because it could definitely tie up nitrogen, and then we're going to have problems. Okay, so we're saying 3 inches. If you have to put in raised beds for poorly drained sites, now we're talking at least 12 inches or maybe even a little bit more, and we want to crown it in the center. Why do we want to do that? In order to help it drain off nicely. And so this is going to help overall. So, vegetable gardens, we always see raised beds. We recommend that. But in certain landscapes, in certain areas, and you can see the image down here, down below, how they raise that up in order to be able to develop that bed and plant that landscape. So here's just a quick image. This is our trial we did out at MD Anderson. This was our rose trial, and you can see how the compost was worked in to the soil. So these beds were treated with 3 inches of compost. They were tilled into a depth of 6 inches, and then the roses were planted on 10-foot centers. Okay, the next key, effective uses of mulches. Nature's blanket. Mulches are great down here. You should be mulching on a regular basis. We recommend 3 inches. The mulch will decompose over time. So think of it as a slow release type of natural fertilizer. It will add organic matter. Mulches will conserve that moisture. They keep down the weeds. They help the microbe population. And especially this time of year, it will moderate those soil temps. So you've got a 3-inch layer of compost and you pull that back, that soil level when you hit it is going to be much cooler than the surface temp. And that is ideal for these plants in order for them to survive and thrive through the heat of our summer. You can see the image of the compost here. What we recommend, and if you can get a hold of it, is the rough stuff that comes out from a tree trimming. If you've got somebody doing tree work, and you can ask them, they'll they'll drop it for you because they usually have to pay to dump that somewhere. And this way, we're keeping it out of the landfill or for wherever they have to dump it. But the most, this roughest stuff works extremely well. So effective uses of mulches, like I said, compost once, mulch for life. This gives you an idea, this profile here. We can see that rough mulch on the top. And then we can see as we work our way down through the profile, how that changes. So you can see the humus in through here, how it's breaking down. And then here's the actual soil layer. So these microbes are breaking this down. It's working its way into the soil profile, and the plants are going to love it. If we're mulching, our top upright corner here, this is what we do not want. Please, 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 if you are mulching, if you take anything away from this talk, no mulch volcanoes. You can see that's probably at least 18 inches, maybe even higher. And if you were to come in here and pull this away, the moisture against the base of that tree, against that bark, it's not good. It's a negative. There is a good chance that you are going to have some serious problems down in the future. What you want to see is something like this, the lower picture. You can see that mulch is nice. It's spread out right to the end of where the drip line is. And you can see that trunk, that root flare is there, and that's what you want. You don't want the mulch right up against the base of the tree, but you want to treat that area, cover that area where that to keep that root system cool and moist. And this is the final product for our trial when we did. So you can see the coarseness of that mulch. We went ahead and we got some pine straw mulch that we did for the walkways to try and keep the weeds down. But this was right from the back of a tree trimming product, and we would just add to it over the year. This trial was in for 3.5, 4 years, and this it worked extremely well. Underneath there is a drip irrigation system, which we will talk about later on when we get to efficient irrigation. But this was our trial that we had. Okay, so planning and design. All right, you've got a plan. All right, so we're on number 3, I believe. We want, with EarthKind, we're going to have a water efficient, environmentally friendly landscape. So you have to think, what beds am I going to work on? Where do I want to attempt this first? I would always recommend, take baby steps. If you're moving into a new house, usually the first area you want to work on maybe is the front of the house, because that's what people are going to see. So start there. Or if it's an established and you want to switch over, find that bed that you can, work your way into it as you incorporate these various principles. And just remember, it doesn't have to be done all in 1 year. Landscaping, especially new or rebuilds, they can get pricey. So you can do it over years. But if you have the plan and you stick to it, you know where your start's going to be and where you want to end. When you design, you want to design for longevity and efficient management. All right. We want to make it easy for ourselves. We want to be successful. We want the plants to thrive and be successful. So the first thing, make sure we've got proper spacing. All right. Right plant in the right place. But don't forget, when you read the labels or you read the books, it may say that this plant is going to top out at 4 to 6 feet. In Texas, with our conditions and our longer growing seasons, I'm finding that these plants are going to get a little bit longer. They're going to get a little bit taller, maybe a little bit wider. Remember, the plants aren't reading the labels that are put on them. But make sure you give them enough space. If you have proper airflow, that's going to cut down on any kind of disease issues and pest issues. You want to position and group them. And I'm sure when Brandy talks about the landscape design principles, she's going to talk about odd numbers, groups of 3, groups of 5. So you're going to want to make sure you position in group. And the main thing, if you've been on any of my other talks, we always talk about diversity. And it's great. The diversity down here is excellent because we can pretty much garden year round. So you can have some sort of interest, some sort of flower production, some source of pollen or nectar in the garden year round.
Hey, Paul, can you unmute yourself? Sorry about that.
I'm so sorry. How far did I mute myself?
That was me by accident.
Oh, okay.
It's just the beginning of the slide.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. I thought I did it. Okay. All right. My producer's got a itchy trigger finger over there. So we will move on. All right. So EarthKind, we are going to talk about one of the concepts is hydrozoning. Okay. So really that concept is we're going to group our plants by their water use. Okay, so our 3 groups are either regular or high water use. So these plants are going to require at least water, maybe at least 1 to 2 times a week, depending on the season and how hot and dry we are. And this group is mostly going to be our turf and annuals. Okay, then we'll have our occasional or medium use, and this is maybe 1 to 2 times a month. And this could be our perennials, our ground covers, maybe our smaller shrubs. And then the last group is really going to be low use, all right? And we're probably not going to worry about any additional irrigation because it's going to be watered by Mother Nature, natural rainfall. Occasionally during a severe drought, you might have to turn some irrigation on and water it, but a lot of our trees, native shrubs, larger plants that are established, they're going to fall into that low water use. So you can see in this layout here, this is the patio, and you can see here's our, there's 2 trees here already. So the blue zone is what we call our high water use areas. And then we see they've got a small lawn area in through here. And then this lighter green area around is our low water use, flowering plants through the remainder of the property. The good thing about designing your layout like this is it will allow you to conserve water also. The biggest challenge and the biggest problem is people have the automatic systems, but their zones are off, and so they're watering annuals or they're watering turf the same as their trees, or they're watering their vegetable garden the same as their shrub area. And this is where you get into problems because one plant needs more water, the other one doesn't, and then you're going to have disease or root rots. So if you can go in thinking about these zones, these hydrozones, you're going to be much more successful. The plants are going to be happier, and you're going to conserve the water and have a lot less disease or pest problems down the road. Okay, are there any questions, Shannon or Kim or anybody, or do you just want me to keep going on?
We are good
no
for
questions,
now.
Paul.
Okay, great. All right, so practical turf areas. I guess this could be a rhetorical question, I guess. What is a practical turf area? If you have kids, your turf area is one thing. If you're empty nesters, your turf area is different. So maybe what we should do is flip it around and say, what is an impractical turf area? And then we'll know what the practical ones are. So if we're talking about impractical, we want to avoid long, narrow turf areas that are difficult to water. And this top picture, how many of you have you seen this? Whether it's in a parking lot or even in the neighborhood. They're trying to irrigate this. They've got the wrong irrigation system on it. And look at the amount of water that is going down the drain there. So, something with perennials or natives or small native shrubs, and that could be a very low maintenance area, maybe some drip irrigation needed, and you would save a lot of money and a lot of water instead of watering the concrete while you're also trying to get that little patch of green. You want to aerate and use compost to compacted areas. So if you look at the image down below here, we'll get a lot of questions. I've got a tree and I can't grow any grass under it. And turf and trees don't get along very well because their water requirements are so different. One of the options, and the other thing people will say is, well, St. Augustine grass doesn't do well in the shade. Actually, it's probably, of the three big ones versus Bermuda and Zoysia, St. Augustine is probably your best choice for a shade area. So one recommendation is you can go ahead and aerate that area, put some compost, and then you can resod. But I would resod, if you're going to put some grass, put that blanket of mulch around that base of the tree. This way you don't have to worry about working too hard in trying to get the turf established there. The other option is the picture in the middle. And they did an excellent job here. They've got a ground cover. It's a shaded area. Why try to force something there that isn't going to work very well? You can cut down on the amount of water there, because once that ground cover is established, the trees are going to be happy. The ground cover is going to be happy. It's going to give a good look, and the plants are all going to be successful. So practical solutions, make sure you take into account what's the correct proportion and that placement. And as I mentioned earlier, your proportion is going to be dependent on, do you have a house full of kids that are out there playing on a regular basis? Do you have a lot of dogs that like to get out and run around? So you've got to take that into account. Make sure you've got the right turf selection, both species and cultivar. There's a lot of breeding out there. So if you want St. Augustine, there's some new varieties out there. If you're looking for Bermuda or Zoysia, there are unique varieties out there. And the other thing is going to be the price of these turfs are different. Zoysia is probably more expensive. I know it's more expensive than St. Augustine, and Bermuda, depending on the cultivar variety, is somewhere in the middle. We want to use sound management practice. So when you're cutting, do you have a mulching mower? Or if you're collecting it, are you using that and putting it into a compost to compost it? Are you mowing at the proper height? St. Augustine is cut much higher than either Zoysia or Bermuda, and for that case, are you using the right type of mower? Zoysia and Bermuda, you probably would do much better with a reel type mower than a rotary. So make sure you're aware of this, and then when you do have issues, make sure you aerate on a regular basis, and top dress with some compost in those compacted areas, and we're going to get much better growth. We're going to get better aeration. We're going to get much better soil development and moisture and air into that profile. Efficient irrigation. How many of you have seen that top picture? Where you go down and you've got almost like every other one, the heads are broken. And then this poor guy over here, he's got some beautiful raised beds, but I guess it must be Wednesday and he waters on Wednesday, and regardless of the amount of water that's there around that bed, he's going to put water out. So, common sense can solve a lot of problems in your landscape. This information here in January, usually a residency, a household will use about 6,000 gallons of water. In July, it goes up, it more than doubles to 16,000. And why? They want to have that jalapeno green grass. They're putting a lot of water on there. And if you design your landscape properly, you can save a lot of money on the amount of water that you put out. And how do we do that? especially in our beds, where our actual landscape beds are, we incorporate either drip or micro irrigation. This system is over 90% efficient. It utilizes low volume emitters. It reduces runoff. So, that odd shaped bed that we saw before. If they had, for turf, you can immerse some of these emitters or these drip systems below and then put the turf on top. They could water it that way and they would have saved a heck of a lot of water. You would not see the water running off there. The other thing, these emitters are at ground level, so there's minimal evaporation. So the water is going where it needs to go. And where is it? The roots. If we're watering overhead, or if we've got sprays and they're going into our beds and we're getting foliage and it's not drying in time, we're going to have disease issues. And so, one thing leads to another. So if we are efficient in our water delivery, we are going to be have much happier plants. And the other thing is the system it's targeted. It's going where the plant needs it at the roots. So the image above here is just a drip. So these are pre-drilled. You just lay it out. Sometimes they're every 12 inches, they're every 18 inches. It depends on the size of the bed. And then you can see these micro emitters. And some of these can be added in if you already have pop-ups. There's conversion kits that you can change to drip irrigation. So it's a very efficient way to get water where it's needed. Appropriate plant selection. We can do a whole hour or several hours on plant selection. The two sites I'm just going to steer you to is on the right hand side here. This is our EarthKind site, and if you go to Aggie Horticulture, you'll see a tab for EarthKind. They've got a plant selector, and you can go to this plant selector. You can either go by region, so we're in region G, or you can put your zip code in, and it will then allow you to even filter down more. Do I want plants for shade? Am I looking for annuals? Am I looking for shrubs? And it will generate a list of plants that you could potentially use. This way, you've got a starting point. You can see what's available, what you like, what you don't like, and go from there. The other resource is the Texas Superstar website. And these plants are tested across Texas. It's a nice complementary group of plants. We've got annuals, we've got perennials, there are some trees, there's some shrubs in there. And so these plants are going to work in Texas, and it doesn't matter what part of Texas, because they are tested across the state. So from north to south, east to west. So these are really two good sources for plant material as you develop your landscape plan. And then we come into appropriate maintenance. So if we did everything else right, okay, our maintenance should be minimal. We talk about integrated pest management. And so when we talk about integrated pest management, a lot of times on the greenhouse side, nursery side, we talk about thresholds. How much pressure can you live with without seeing major damage? If you see an aphid or two, and you've got a beneficial insect like this green lacewing larvae, this guy's going to take care of those populations for you, and you're not going to have to spray. So a lot of it comes down to what can you live with. The other is, we're reducing our yard waste. Okay, if we're using a mulching mower, or if we're collecting the clippings, but we're composting them at our house, that we can then use to improve our soil. We're cutting down on the amount of product that is going to the landfill and is sitting there. So we're really closing the circle, and we're using our resources efficiently. All right, so we've gone through this, just for something for you to think about. It's no, poll here, but, is this an EarthKind landscape? A lot of it depends on what you think, but from what we just talked about, my perspective on this would be no. And this is, if you look back at some of the old xeriscaping, this was it. They got rid of turf, they put down hardscape, they put down rocks. And they went with, you've got yuccas and things like that in there, very low water. But is it pleasing? And that's usually in the eye of the beholder, as opposed to something, like this, um, that you've got some turf, you've got these plants grouped in their hydrozone. They've got a similar water requirements, so they are going to thrive. And they are going to be successful with minimal inputs, and that's what we strive for. People will say I've got a brown thumb. A lot of times it's, I honestly think people kill their plants with kindness. They put too much effort into it. At my house, I did new product development for a nursery for 10 years. I put minimal effort into it because I wanted to see those plants thrive on their own. And if they did, I knew we had a winner, because a lot of people don't have the time, and they don't want to put the extra time into doing it. But just some of the basics, and you can really be successful in your landscape. So here's some additional resources. I think they've probably been posting these. So the first one is the Aggie Horticulture site. The second one, if you go through the Aggie Horticulture site, you can find the EarthKind. The next one is the Texas Superstar, which I had talked about. And then these additional guides, just for some other information on Urban Landscape Guide by A&M, their integrated pest management site. And then, we didn't touch on rainwater harvesting, but this could incorporate itself nicely into an EarthKind landscape by capturing that water and using that as an additional resource. So with that, I want to thank you for joining us this morning. Remember, if you're doing EarthKind, it's a quality landscape that conserves water and protects the environment, and that's the key. And that's what everybody is looking for. They're looking for the right answers. And I hope that this information, along with the links, will get you started down the road of incorporating some of this into your own landscape. So with that, do we have any questions? We can open it up to questions.
Yes, we have a couple questions, Paul.
Okay.
So the first one says, we've had trouble with auxiliary fungus from mulch. Is there a way to avoid it?
A lot of times, and I'm assuming maybe this just occurred after we just had this extreme. Usually, if you see that fungus, it's staying too wet. Okay, so if you can dry it out, if you can have, depending on where it is. So if it's on an automatic system, cut back on the amount of water. If it's because we've had, these rains the other week, well over 5 inches during the course of the week, being able to dry things out is going to help. The other things people will do is they will just scrape them off, that layer off the top of that mulch, and then just discard it. But the main thing is moisture. These fungus like the moisture. The more moisture, it's the ideal conditions, and this plant is going to, or this fungus is going to thrive in it.
Okay. All right. Ready for the next question?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. How do you unclog a drip irrigation hose? I have a she says, I have a drip irrigation installed in my flower beds, but not all the hose are emitting water.
Okay, so if the irrigation system was installed properly, there should be, at the end of it somewhere, there should be a cap on it so you can flush that system. A lot of systems will spaghetti back and forth. They will go back and forth, but usually they will end and there should be a cap there. And so if you open that cap and run your system, if there's any debris or sediment that has built up, you should be able to flush it out. Let it run for a couple minutes, and then everything else should flow properly. If there's not a cap there, then you may want to get a licensed irrigator, a company to come out and take a look to see. The other issue is, depending on if it's drip tape or if it's these emitters, maybe the emitter is clogged, and you might just have to Some of them have little filters in it. Some of them you may just have to change out. But there should be a cap on it at the end of the system that you can flush out that system. And I usually recommend that, at the beginning of the year and then at the end of the year, at the end of the season, just to clear out any kind of sediment.
Okay. So a couple more questions here.
Sure.
Says there are many commercial compost available. What should I use for, excuse me, Paul, what should I look for in selecting compost?
I would say there's three local companies, 4 local companies. And I would say those 4 companies are reputable. They've got good products. So, and so the 4 companies you have, now I got to remember them all. Nature's Way, Living Earth, the Ground Up, and the 4th one is escaping me, but they're right out here in Katy. Those 4 companies, if you go with their product, they do their own, they're producing it, bagging it themselves, or you can buy in bulk from them. And you can rest assured that you're getting a good product.
Okay, ready for the next question?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. What do you think of green mulch plants instead of wood mulch or leaf mulch in Texas? Green mulch is used in much of the north/east.
Okay, and so I'm assuming you're saying growing a cover crop, like a rye crop. We do this a lot in our vegetable gardens where we'll grow a green mulch crop, and before it goes to seed, you till it under, and that product goes in and is decayed and broken down. If you can do it, by all means go for it, because you're putting back. It's going to be a good product. It's going to help the microbes. It's going to help the soil health. But when you're in, established landscapes where you have shrubs and things like that, it gets a little bit more difficult. But, if you've got raised beds that you're using for vegetables, even when we had our beds out at Bear Creek, they would put every now and then they would take a bed and they'd grow a green mulch crop, through the cool season, till it under before it started to set seed or flower, and just allow it to break down over time. Yes, by all means, you can do it.
Okay, Paul, no more questions.
All right. Well, I want to thank you all for joining us today. As you can see, our lecture series next week, on the 13th, will be Mr. Shannon Dietz, and he will be covering home lawn maintenance and care part 2. So I want to thank you all. I hope you enjoyed today's session. You will be receiving a link to a survey along with the link to this recording. And by all means, let your friends know about us. And you guys have a great day and a great week. We'll see you next Thursday.